Hey everybody, Riot Mort here with Riot Kent. We are here for another patch post-mortem for patch 11.12, which was our mid-set patch. Kent, how you doing?
I'm good, Mort. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. So generally it seems like this patch was pretty well received. I've heard a few people call it the best patch of the set so far. A few others not quite as happy as we've leaned on verticals a little heavily. But overall, generally seems like this was in the right direction. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I think there are some complaints about the vertical traits, but other than that, seems like a lot of things are playable. Seems like we're definitely moving in a good direction, and just with next batch, once we tune some more things, we should be in a really good spot.
Cool. Well, in the hopes of making sure this video isn't an hour long, let's dive right in and see what we can get through here. Skyglass Origin event, TFT's first event that isn't just a set launch. I got to admit, so I didn't have a ton of visibility as they were creating this. I thought it turned out pretty good. I finished my window yesterday, got my stuff. Seemed like a nice small event. I don't know. I felt pretty good about it.
I'm, I think it was a very strong motivator to see things go so sad, and so
Yeah,
you want to make it better.
yeah. So definitely give us more feedback on this event. I think it'll definitely not be the last event we do. But yeah, let us know what you think. So speaking of cool stuff, Earth Dowsey. Did you get yours?
I did. I got really lucky, but I know some people didn't. More.
I I mean, mine took about 40 eggs, but that's what chase items are, and again, my conscience is clear as long as most of our little legends are direct purchasable. Having a few chase ones for the people that want to engage, good. I think it's good for the game. So I know there's going to be some people that are sad they couldn't get it or couldn't afford it, but that's the reality of a game that needs to make money. And to be honest, I kind of hope we do more of these, as long as we don't do the thing where we do too many and there's like one per month or something stupid. But if you told me there's like one of these per set, I'm like, all right, I'm down.
Yep, yep.
Cool.
I'm really happy about showing off. Like once when you do get it, it feels really good because you can show off like the cool new special little legend that you have, and it's
Yep.
so cute.
Yep. All right. All right. PC small thing here, but now if you don't have a summoner icon, it'll show your little legend icon, which I think is kind of great because now, especially for mobile players, they just have an icon and not a black empty circle. So that was cool. Not a lot to talk about there. Okay. Loot orbs, Reforger, and Magnetic Remover are back. Generally, I think this has been a positive. When you drop them, it's like, that's nice, that's cool. They're literally free, so you're not like losing anything else. I've seen a few people that were like, "Oh my god, I got 3 Reforgers. It's so bad luck," and it's like, "You got 3 Reforgers. Grats you. That's amazing." So
Yeah, I think a big part of the success of this is like it's free. Like it doesn't cost you gold, doesn't take anything else away from you. It's literally just free, and so it's just more toys for you to play with. So it's
yep,
been fun.
yep. I've definitely had at least 2 games where either a remover or Reforger saved my ass. So feels pretty good.
Yeah, same, same.
Yeah, if anything, I'd say nice to see him back, and hopefully we do more in the future. So,
I agree.
all right, the armory changes. It's a lot of patch notes to talk about the enhanced armories. Generally, what I'll say is I think the enhanced armories themselves were a massive success. I think they've created some really cool, fun moments that have been good. I do think we went too far on the availability of things like spatulas, Nikos, emblems, and I think you'll see changes in the next patch to address that. But so we certainly didn't get it perfect on launch, but generally the games where 4-2 rolls around and I don't get an armory, I'm just like, I'm sad.
Same. Yeah, I wish there was an armory every 4-2. I just wait for it. Like I know I combine my items. Like please show up, and then it doesn't show up. I feel sad. But I mean, we've gotten pretty good feedback on this overall, even from like challenger players. It's like it's not perfect right now, and we do have changes coming to address like the outlier issues. But overall, I think it's been received really positively.
Yeah, I think my favorite was Kurimex when I first saw him playing it, and he said, "Dude, it's fun as fuck. I don't know if it's competitive, but holy crap, it's fun." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, sweet, we did it." So,
Yeah.
all right, sweet. Critical strike damage. I think ignoring some of the sneaky bugs that most players didn't notice that were in here with like Wolf and what was it, Wolf and Zerat Portal and one other one?
Daisy.
Daisy, that's right. But ignoring those bugs, I think this is another change that worked out really well. I think we're starting to see slightly more diverse itemization across the board. I think people are still running, i.e., Jeweled Gauntlet on Karma or other thing. Like it didn't ruin it. Like this felt like the right kind of change, where like it didn't screw up your perception of the game. But if anything, maybe we've talked about like AD itemization got a little worse because of this, maybe. But otherwise, I think generally positive change.
Yeah, I think it definitely diversified item builds. I think long term we still have. Personally, I still think Infinity Edge is not like a very exciting item that's a crit item because it just gives you consistency rather than giving you big numbers. But that's something to think about for the long term. But like for now, definitely seeing a lot more diverse itemization in this patch.
Sweet. Okay, traits. We added chase traits. Sweet. To be honest, none of these chase traits have been that problematic. I think maybe 6, but even like 6 for newer, like no one's really playing that much. We're not seeing it dominate. 6 Dragon Slayers, rare. 4 Ironclad is like a little annoying, but it's not like many people are playing it. 6 Spellweaver and 9 Skirmisher are almost non-existent. So like this just seems positive.
Yeah, I think 4 Revenant's a bit strong, but like it hasn't been anything that's been like overly toxic for the game.
Sweet.
Or overly negative for the game at all, actually. Like it hasn't been that bad. Yep. Some traits are really strong.
Yep. All right. Cavalier change. So I think this one was a necessary evil. This is one where I'm torn because the goal was like Cavalier, should still be a comp. It should still be a playable comp. And I think we've basically seen it fall off. I don't see it much. At least when I've been playing on ladder, I think I've seen it like once or twice, and it did top 4, to be fair, but it's definitely a lot worse. So I don't know, and I don't see Cavalier in like the early mid game either, right? Like you don't see people throwing in a Sejuani, Hecarim, Kled and being like, sweet, I have a happy front line. So I don't know. I think there's still work to do here, but it does seem way less priority than some of our other problems.
And I mean, personally, I played 3 Cavalier, and I've seen it work as a frontline. I think it's not like as popular as like a different kind of frontline, but I mean, it's definitely usable, especially with like Forgotten being so popular. But I think part of why the comp is falling off so much is just the other strong comps right now are kind of drowning it out and not giving it enough time to 3-star all of its units in stage 4. So hopefully, like once next patch hits, we'll see a resurgence of like, this is not going to be like you force this every game, but if you have the right openers, this should be playable at least.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. If people are running 3 Cavalier in the early mid game, I'll call it a success. I don't like that. I don't necessarily need it to be like the end game state. But yeah, we'll see.
I think Hecarim ended up in a really like balanced spot where it's like great frontliner and just not like overly oppressive anymore. And so yeah,
he's really good in Forgotten. No argument there. He's really good in Forgotten. So. Okay, Monstrosity. There were a bunch of changes to basically shift its power to be a little more tank and a little less free backline assassin. Generally, I think these have been a success. We're still seeing A-Bomb be played. A little less popular in NA, but certainly more popular in other regions. Seems like it's still strong. Seems like it's still doing well. I will say I personally still don't think it's enough. I still think unless you have 5 A-Bomb, it's still just kind of fragile. He kind of dies. 3 A-Bomb late game may as well not exist. One of the challenges of balancing this around flat health. But there have been a few games where we've seen it be successful. It's just a lot harder to run now, I think.
Yeah, I think it suffers from the flat health like monster that jumps in and it just has a really big spike and then starts to fall off. But I think overall like these changes were positive and made the monstrosity healthier for the game. No longer just insta killing your backline is a lot better. Like you can position against him. There's actually counterplay now.
Yeah, I know you and I disagree on this a bit, but I still think he needs to be tankier. He's not quite the front line that you would expect big giant super minion to be, but
yeah, I think there's still some work to be done. But like these changes I think have been positive and in the right direction. I think maybe we can go tankier and or some kind of like profile where because he's landing on the front line, let him absorb more damage.
Yep. All right, Dawnbringer. All I can say is thank God we didn't ship 15. That would have been a terrible tragedy. We shipped 12. I think it's funny because I don't actually think this number is wrong. I think if anything, Karma and Garen are carrying a bit too much weight of Dawnbringer in the late game, which we'll talk about later. But I actually think this number is correct for the Dawnbringer trait.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know if this like change was necessary, but I could like the argument of shift power away from Garen and Karma into the trait so the other units have time to like I agree with that statement. So.
Right. Because, like, we don't see Riven, 6 Dawnbringer Riven, right? Like, that's just not happening. A lot of the power right now is in Karma and Garen. So, like, there's work to do there, which, again, we'll talk about when we get to them in the patch notes here. But I think, like I said, the fact that you're not seeing 6 Dawnbringer Riven proves that the trait itself is actually probably where it's supposed to be. Cool. Redeemed. I mean, people are playing 6 Redeemed now, so that's cool. That was one of the goals. We did it. 9 Redeemed, it's at least more playable. Like, I haven't seen people dominate with 9 Redeemed. It doesn't feel like a 9 chase trait, but at least it's more playable than it was. It was garbage before.
Yeah, good change, I think, overall. Like, Redeem needed it, moving in a good direction.
Cool. And then Skirmisher 3 buff. I feel like this didn't do enough. Like, skirmishers are still just really rough, and even when you get like a 2-star Udyr plus a Trundle plus a Pantheon from an orb, it's like, it's okay.
I kind of disagree. I think Skirmisher opener is actually really strong right now, especially if you have like an early Pantheon, and then it builds into the Yasuo comp, who uses this really well with their 3 Skirmisher, 4 Dragon Slayer, 4 Nightbringer kind of thing. So
all right.
Yeah, I think this is a good change. I think we just didn't like. I think 6 Skirmisher could have gotten a small buff too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and Jax in particular, the fact that like Yasuo is the best user of Skirmisher right now that's a little gross. All right, Lissandra. It's funny, when the patch first came out, we had a lot of people saying Lissandra was broken now and she was the best champ in the set now from a 10% buff, and I'm like, don't know if that one's true.
Yeah.
If anything, I'll say Lissandra feels correct now. She finally feels like exactly what she's supposed to be. I think we finally got Lissandra right here.
Agree. This was good for Lissandra, and she's definitely not OP, but she needed these buffs.
Yep. I'll say the same thing actually about Vayne. Vayne 2 finally feels like something you're happy to have, and Vayne 2 uses 6 Forgotten well and is a good champion. I do think there's a different problem, which is Vayne is way too tied to Forgotten. But I think Vayne actually feels balanced now.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about this today. Like, Vayne feels super tied to Forgotten, and she just uses the trait too well. So then, like, buffing her as a champion is just it becomes tough because of the trait.
Yep.
Plus Vayne, and so, but like, yeah, good change though. Like, Vayne actually feels like a usable 3 Forgotten opener unit now.
Yep. Vladimir, very tiny buff. This one's going to be debatable because I think Vlad has certainly become a low elo annoyance for sure. There is not much more annoying in the early to mid game than running up against an Archangel Archdemon's Vladimir. That being said, I still think this change was correct, because if you face like a Warmog's Deathcap Vlad, it still actually feels a little underwhelming.
I kind of agree that like this change. Well, I actually don't know if how much this change actually mattered in making Vlad so strong. I think part of it is like Lissandra, the Lissandra being better, as a splash, but also mainly the Archangel item buffs is what made Vlad kind of
right, which we'll talk about.
This 5 mana isn't what caused the problem, I think.
Yeah, and even then we talk about it as a problem, but like no one's playing Archangel Vlad at high elo, so it's like it's not even actually a problem. It's just like it's one of those unique states that when you face can be frustrating, but it's not actually that good.
Yeah, well, it kind of requires like the perfect setup. Like if you have both types of Archangels, you can streak really, really hard, and you can use that as like your opener even in high elo. And then, but like it's really specific. And then
Yeah,
Mostly it's just like dominating in
the lower elos.
lower. Yeah.
Yep, agreed. Okay. All right, brand. So I know we needed to make this change because it fixed a bug, but God, I hate brand now. I know you disagree with this on me. Like, you get a blue buff brand now early, and it's like not good.
I Yeah, I mean I disagree on that. Like I still like blue buff brand. I still think he's really good. I think that like this looks like a really big nerf, but like in practice it doesn't feel that bad. Maybe just because he was really strong before.
Every time I get a brand now with a blue buff, what ends up happening is like I end up losing 4-0 and all their team is at 10%. Like it just doesn't do it. I don't know. I'll be curious to see, and we're not buffing it next patch or anything, so it'll be interesting to see. But I'm real negative on this change personally.
Yeah. I mean, we can see how it plays out once like the meta shifts some more. And
Yep. Okay, Hecarim. What a balanced nightmare. My God. Hecarim was a challenge. To be honest, the whole like bug fix plus Cavalier plus this guy plus Ionic, like, God, we were worried going into this patch. Did we overdo it is the question mark. And the answer I think is no, but like if you told me he's so good and forgotten though. That's the thing.
he's actually good. Like even like 3 Cavalier opener, he's still really tanky even without Forgotten in. And it's just like, I mean, ultimately he's a 2 cost unit, and if you don't 3-star him, I think he's like where he should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't really speak for like 3-star. He looks okay, and but I don't really know like from experience how a 3-star Hecarim.
Yep. No,
But he seems to be in a good spot, you know.
yeah, like you said, I think we're pretty close here. So, overall, considering how far we thought we were off, I think we ended up in a pretty good spot. So,
Agreed.
all right, LeBlanc. I'm just going to call this a necessary evil. I know there are certain players that are unhappy we had to make this change. I know it was painful for them, but the reality is this change needed to happen. It's made for a healthier game. LeBlanc is kind of a weird champ now. I think she is a bit weak, but I wouldn't buff her damage, but I also wouldn't buff her CC, so like, ugh.
Yeah, I think if we made changes, I think we had to change like kind of the profile-ish by like, you know, as random example, like up the mana but make her CC longer or something like that.
Yeah.
More Diana-esque. But like I think this change had to happen. It's just like player perception will take time to change around like what LeBlanc is supposed to be, because in the past she was a damage dealer and now she's not. And so it's very different.
Yep. Nautilus. I think this was just a good change. It's helped Knights a little bit. I've actually seen people actually starting to run Knights openers. Holy crap. I think people have been okay. It's still like, you get a 2-star Nautilus early, you're still not excited about it, so there's still work to do. But again, I'd rather edge it into correct than overbuff, so I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, in general, these AD buffs, I think they were really positive. I think Nautilus still needs more work, maybe, but the AD changes were all good, especially Thresh. Thresh, like auto attacking people with Forgotten in for like so much damage.
I was gonna say, was Thresh actually the one that shouldn't have happened?
It's maybe because of Forgotten, right?
Right. Well, it's Forgotten, and he was already useful. He already like hits a core backliner for a strong amount. If there's one of these I think was incorrect, it would be the Thresh one. Because Sejuani I think was solid. Like, people aren't running a ton of Sejuani. It buffed her out in the early game. It's fine. Thresh is the one I'm like, maybe shouldn't have done this one.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
All right. 3 cost. Katarina 3 nerf. Fine. I mean, Katarina 3 still good. So, seems like the right kind of nerf.
Yep, agreed.
Riven 3 revert and the Riven AD nerf. I think this is correct. I think Riven is still good. Like, I still see Rivens dominating the early mid game. If you get a Riven with a Deathblade and a Hurricane, like, ow. I think the challenge right now has actually been that Riven can't really win the end game unless she's 3-star, which is inconsistent, and struggles with some of the AP comps that are doing well, the Karma, because a lot of the items that you would transition from a like Riven mid game into like a Draven or a Aphelios are currently underperforming a little bit. So I think that's actually been the bigger thing that has hit Ribbon, less than these changes were incorrect.
Yeah, I think these changes were correct too. I think another thing that played a big part, I think, in her like becoming weaker is the crit damage changes.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, I think these changes were like overall positive. I think in conjunction with everything else, it might have made her weaker than we ultimately wanted, but I think she's still like in a good spot,
Yep.
decent spot.
Nunu and Zyra, pretty much same thing. They got some slight buffs. Or actually, Nunu is a slight nerf. Zyra is a slight buff. Nunu feels fair and isn't dominating the meta. Now that A-Bomb's not insane, so that's fine. Zyra's a little bit better, but still not great. I still like the worst feeling in the world is when you hit a 2-star Zyra at like 2-3 and you're like, I high rolled a 2-star 3 cost, except I didn't because it's Zyra. So, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, she's got like the draconic, like she's easier to 2-star, so then she's not as strong as like some of the other 3 costs.
Yep. Yep. All right, Aphelios, good buff, not enough.
Agree.
Aphelios is weird because he's only really good in one comp right now, which I think is the 4 Mystic variation. But that is also like, it's one of those comps that reminds me of the Kale comp where like it's really hard to put together, requires a like almost full board transition in the late game, very difficult to pilot comp.
Yeah, and I think feels especially hard to get there because Aphelios 1 struggles to kill things, whereas like once you hit Aphelios 2, you have items on him, like he's actually like killing backliners with his ult now, but at like 1-star especially, it's just you sometimes end fights taking a bunch of damage, and it's hard to put together this like expensive comp that he needs to succeed.
Yep. Jax, same thing. We reverted. I'm glad we did. Didn't go enough. Jax is still too weak. Of all the 4 costs right now in our data, he looked the worst. So some work to do on Jax. But again, directionally correct, so there's nothing wrong here other than just maybe a little too conservative.
Yep, agree.
Karma. So this was a risky change. And I think this one's hard. Because I think generally, better for the game, right? More flexible Karma. The fact that there's even a debate now where it's like, does she need Shojin blue buff? Can you go 3 damage items? That's a cool conversation that like people are actually considering different itemizations on Karma. So to that regard, I think it was a success. However, I think we overshot it. Between this, the Dawnbringer, whatever, the items, the crit, like Karma's too good. So we overshot it a bit.
Yeah, and we had a discussion about like how many shots should she take to fully ramp, and we ended up with where we landed, which was like 3. But I'm still not completely sure if that was the right. Like maybe she needs to do 4. I don't know if she just ramps up to like non-stop casting too quickly. I think it'll take more time to like figure that out completely. But like at 3, I think her numbers are just slightly too high in conjunction with all the other changes that we made, and so we should just we just overshot a little bit on the damage front.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then Vel'Koz, I think this is a solid buff. I think Vel'Koz is another champ that might finally be in the right spot.
Yep, so, agree. I like this change a lot.
Cool. And then Kale, this was a Band-Aid. We called it a Band-Aid beforehand. It did what it did. Band-Aided a little bit, didn't solve the problem. Work to be done, coming next patch.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like she just attacks so fast once she ascends to that point, just like she just feels immune for so long.
Yeah, the idea was at 5.0 attack speed, she could basically proc this every other second, so she's immune 50% of the time at 5.0 attack speed, which is still pretty insane.
Mm-hmm.
Considering she's also healing up, because usually you have a Shadow Hodge on her or something.
Yep, and blowing things up.
Yep. Okay, Archangel Archdemon. If you watch the patch rundown, I know Static and I were pretty debatey on this one. And I think the answer was we were both right, as lame as that sounds, in the sense that I think buffing Archangel's staff was correct. I think having that item be an item that like you can even build on Karma or Vel'Koz, and it's not the worst. Feels good. That's a good change. And so I think J-Bach was right in that regard. I think buffing this and Staff of the Archdemon was a big mistake. I think doing both at the same time did exactly what I said it would, which was anyone who could abuse both of them got to abuse them even more, and Vlad's and Warwick's and Aatrox's were like this really awkward, unhealthy garbage fire.
Yeah. I mean I think the changes made the items more popular and like kind of usable and actually being built, which is like a good thing even outside of the primary users. Like it's kind of being used, which is like a positive. But I think overall, if like on these two, the one that's was a more risky change and probably can cause more unhealthy cycles or gameplay is the Archdemon staff, and so maybe we didn't need to do that one.
Yep. Okay, Bloodthirster and Risk Thirster. I'll get out of the way. Risk Thirster, I think this is just a good change. Like Risk Thirster being a better item, good. Happy days. Bloodthirster, how you feeling about this one?
I feel like it didn't make a difference, like in the situations where you would build it or not build it. Like if you wanted BT, the lifesteal, you're building the BT regardless of how much lifesteal because the champions that use it will overheal from it anyways.
Yep. Yeah, and again, when we talk about things that got the nerf bat this time, it was like hitting Draven and Aphelios with this felt kind of bad. I think this hit Set pretty hard. Not that anyone's playing Set right now, but this certainly didn't help. I think this one was a mistake. I actually think we shouldn't have done this change personally.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. Yeah.
Cool. Hand of Justice. I think this is another like directionally correct. Makes Hand of Justice a little better. Doesn't like make it S tier, which is good. So I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Ionic Spark. Still work to do on Ionic Spark, but
I'm very positive on the Ionic Spark change. Actually, I think having it actually be like an AOE shred item that you can use, especially on like units that shred for itself, like Katarina.
Yep.
I think it's great to align it with like the other AOE shreds that are available.
Agreed. Sacrificial Gauntlet. I think this was a great change. I think it buffed AP casters a little much, but I think it was a great change because now it's like you don't put it on Karma and kill yourself. You don't put it on Brand and kill yourself. So I'm happy with this change.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just worried that like, did my numbers end up too light where like you don't even where it's always Sacrificial Gauntlet and never Jeweled Gauntlet. Like if you can, you will always build this because whether or not you have healing. I just hope we don't. It's not like at that state, but it kind of feels like it might be.
I don't think it is.
So.
I don't think it is. I think the reason you feel that is because the two meta casters right now are Karma, who has Dawnbringer, and Vel'Koz, who only needs one cast. I've tried playing this item on like Katarina, Teemo, and like while the self damage isn't bad, it adds up pretty quick, and it does end up actually still feeling kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I should have done that. So actually, I'm pretty happy with how this one landed.
Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that.
Titan's Revenge. We knew this was like a lame change. It was like kind of an unhealthy item and an unhealthy pattern, and we were kind of just like maybe putting it down a bit to not be as unhealthy. So I think we needed to do this, but hooray.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's tied to a few units, and those units abuse this, especially like Hecarim and Leona. It's like they would use this to way too much power. So like kind of sucks because nerfing it makes it like less broad and usable by other units, but I think it had to be done.
Yep. And then Vengeful Trapclaw. We changed the name. Terrible change. Ruined the meta. Probably gonna fire you over it, you know.
I'm very happy about the name, by the way. So. Like Banshee's Veil, you know?
Oh, I get it. Thank you. Alright, and bug fixes. There were bug fixes, which is good. Although I will say the fixed a rare kindred bug while Wolf would get stuck on. Oh no, we fixed that one. Some of these bug fixes we've like said were fixed, and then they end up feeling like a lot of the movement ones. But generally, the Vel'Koz one especially was really nice. Pantheon being able to crit has certainly opened up the Pantheon Varus build a bit. Yeah, but overall good stuff. And then there was no B patch. So, and I will say, by the end of the patch, again, we're starting to see that stabilization where the meta is starting to feel a little solved. But hopefully we can prevent as much thrash. Hopefully next patch doesn't feel like everyone has to relearn the meta. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think overall, like we're trying to move in smaller. We think we're getting to a good point, so like trying to move in smaller increments in right direction from now on. And it always surprises me how fast the meta gets solved, though. But I guess that's kind of how it goes. Like it takes like almost a week to solve it, and you have like a week to play with the solved meta.
Yeah, we're still seeing some stuff come out, you know, and people playing in different comps in different ways and different optimizations. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily solved, but like certainly people have found their old reliables, right? The Six Forgotten, the Yasuo, the Six Dawnbringer, like they've certainly become the old reliables. So
True, and then we see new like fun stuff spring up, like stacking locks and things like that throughout like the later few days of like figuring out the patch. So
yep,
it's always fun.
yep. Okay, any closing thoughts from you?
No, I think we covered it all. Just I think overall the patch was good. We overshot on some areas, and we'll be addressing it like next patch. And
Yep.
but I think overall like we're moving in a really good direction. Our philosophy for like not thrashing things is positive.
Yep. All right, that's going to do it for the 11-12 post-mortem. Stay tuned tomorrow for the 11-13 rundown, and then 11-14, and then 11-15 is mid-set. So, here we go. All right.
So quick.
I know. All right, that's going to do it from us. Until next time, take it easy.